Is this thing on? Now, what's going on, guys? It's me, Joey. Over the years, you guys have known me by many names. And for those of you who've been around the longest, you guys may have known me even as Toon Boy Joey.
Hello YouTube, this is Toon Boy Joey.
Whoa, that was a bit too far. But nah, for real. About 5 years ago is when I first ever started making content. And that was under the name JDW Gaming. I wasn't streaming at this time. I just played a bunch of video games and recorded cool clips on my Acer 5 Nitro laptop in the bedroom of my dad's apartment. Making it big and even having a streaming career was nothing but a pipe dream at that point. Then this new app hit the market called TikTok. And I figured, hey, what harm could it do to share some of my clips? And I lucked out. My first ever video got about 2,000 views, which in retrospect isn't the craziest number, but literally overnight, I gained about 200 followers from that video. And that's when I saw the potential, and I took all of that momentum and I just ran with it. At the time, I was playing Fortnite, and it was getting super repetitive, and as people tend to do, I was getting burnt out. I decided to completely rebrand and flip the script, thus creating the JDubs TV name you know and love. And I was like, you know what? I haven't played Apex in a while. So I revisited Apex about season 7, and that's when I started streaming. And my god, that was the best decision I've ever made in my entire life. And for about 2 years, I was living the dream. Every time I'd hit that go live button, I would have 30 to 60 people just chilling with me. Streaming was nearly paying my rent every month, content was fresh and new, and I couldn't be happier. But after a couple of years of Apex, as people tend to do, I got burnt out. And this marks chapter 1, the downfall. Now, when I say downfall, I'm of course referring to the point at which the internet would say I fell off. To set some context for this chapter, we gotta go back about 6 months, when I had just gotten my brand new Google Pixel 7, which by the way is the best phone I've ever owned. Why is this relevant, you ask? Let me tell you. So when I was setting up my new phone, obviously priority number 1 was my TikTok. So I went to log in and get everything set up. When I realized I needed my phone number to validate my login, which wouldn't be a problem for most people, but most people aren't stupid. 3 years ago, when I made my big JDubs_TV TikTok account, my phone number at the time was already tied to another TikTok account, which would have been the JDW Gaming TikTok account. And so I figured, I'll just go online and use a disposable phone number and link my account to that. Because I'm never gonna need my phone number. I needed my phone number. So because I was unable to verify my phone number, I lost access to my JDubs TV account entirely. Despite my many attempts to reach out to TikTok support, I never heard anything back. And initially, I saw this as kind of a W. At the time, I already had like a spam account that had about 14K followers. So in the moment, I decided to pick up shop and migrate everything over to that account, which in all fairness was going really well for a while. It was around this time that I was making Pokemon content. I couldn't tell you what ignited it, but I absolutely fell back in love with Pokemon, to the point where I made a daily vlog series that not only followed my day-to-day life, but also my progress in Pokemon Go. Making these episodes took me about 3 hours a day, and I did it for a solid couple weeks. So, like people tend to do, you guessed it, I got burnt out. And as if all of this doesn't seem chaotic enough, at the time, I had a girlfriend. I had known this girl for about 3 years, and we were in a committed relationship. But it was around this time that I was realizing that I wasn't really happy with how things were going. And shortly after expressing that realization, that also ended. Still not enough? Well, freshly burnt out on Pokemon content, I was actually signed to an organization at the time. And with all the chaos happening in my life, and me really not knowing what direction I wanted to take my content in the future, I thought it was really unfair that my organization had to deal with that. And so I parted ways with them as well. At this point in my life, I was basically purging people and things out of my life, thinking it would really help me be able to focus on what I really want in the future. And even after doing all of that, I really wasn't finding any answers. Which leads me to chapter 2, the existential crisis. All of the gray space between about 6 months ago, leading all the way up to just about a month ago, was probably the toughest time in my entire life mentally. I was also having trouble at my full-time job, not knowing if I wanted to stay there, or what I wanted to do in that aspect of my life. And it was really tough for me, because I had felt like that before, but previously I had been able to go home from that, sit down, and just stream all my problems away. But I was also struggling with that side of my life as well. So I really didn't have an outlet. On top of that, I had just gotten a studio apartment by myself, and as I mentioned previously, I didn't have a girlfriend anymore. I really wasn't talking to many of my friends. I was just in complete isolation mode. I really wasn't even reaching out to my community, as streams and videos were really few and far between with really no direction at all. But then I saw the light in the tunnel. Dom, one of my best friends, who you guys know as Daily Dom TV in my chat, I fucking love you by the way, happened to work for the same company as me at the time, and he had a spot open up working under him. And you best believe I threw myself at that shit. And once things started to improve in that aspect of my life, mentally, things started getting way better. My passion for gaming had been completely rekindled, as at the time, Fortnite was kind of starting to talk about their new chapter and the whole OG stuff. So I was getting a lot more consistent with streaming, and I was actually having fun. But something still hadn't left my mind at that point. I just didn't want to fully let go of my Pokemon Pokemon addiction. Again, I have no idea what sparked this, but I was already in so deep. And yes, I got burnt out of playing the games, but at this point I had surrounded myself with Pokemon in every way. I had even been dabbling with VTubing with Pokemon models, which very, very rapidly transitions into chapter 3 and the final chapter of this story. Self-discovery. Alright, y'all, before I get into the juice of this chapter, and trust me, there's a lot of juice in this chapter, you have to understand that all of what I'm about to say took place in the span of about a month. So basically, remember how I said I went through a phase of dabbling with VTubing with Pokemon models and such? Well, what I didn't mention up until now is that as I was throwing that all together and setting that all up, not so surprisingly, I came across a lot of people, content, and art from the furry fandom. Furry fandom. As VTubing and 3D modeling is a very common way for furries to express themselves, and at this point in my life, the furry fandom was something I was completely indifferent to. I knew of its existence, but I really didn't know enough about it to have a strong opinion about it myself, so I would always just kind of acknowledge it and move on. But I would encounter this stuff frequently enough to where I really couldn't contain my curiosity anymore. And so I took Pandora's box and I opened it. And very rapidly, I found myself consuming more and more content from the fandom, and every single person I was consuming content from was so talented, funny, eccentric, and just had me completely hooked. And what's really cool about the fandom is that as eccentric and creative as the people are, just about all of them have an equally eccentric and creative character behind them, all of which are completely customized and original. And those are called people's personas. It quickly reached a point where I was entirely invested and I was ready to slap that furry tag on my stream. And that's what I did. And on my second ever Twitch stream with the furry tag, I was reached out to by a moldy dog named Jick. Jick is actually a pretty large and reputable creator in the fandom. He pulled up to my stream and said he was hosting a Fortnite tournament. It was only furries and there were only 3 spots available, so I quickly slithered my way into one of those 3 spots. I saw this as a point to finally start networking with some people from the fandom, because up till that point I had only consumed content from a distance. And oh my god, was it the best decision I've ever made. Every single person that was involved with this event, have it be the people organizing it or the people participating in it, were the most positive, respectful, inviting, and welcoming individuals I've ever met. That event served as validation that I had made the right decision. But of all the people I had met from that event, there was one man that stood out. This is Paddles, a blue little penguin that wears a green hoodie and a fish pin. You guys might know him as Pixel Penguin in my chat. I met him in one of my tournament practice sessions. We immediately clicked and we started playing together all the time. We played together and played together and played together until eventually it grew beyond that. We were watching movies together. I was talking to him all throughout my work day, and it's very important to note that up until this point in my life, like literally all 22 years before this, I had never had any reason to question my sexuality or anything of that nature. But I will admit, there was something about this guy. I don't know if it was how understanding he was, how smart he was, how funny he was, or how cracked at Fortnite he was, but I was feeling some shit. And it had been a long time since I felt this way about anyone. And I had just come out of a 3-year relationship, mind you, so that's saying a lot. And when it comes to the matter of my sexuality, this is all so new to me, and there really are some things I'm still trying to figure out myself, so I don't really want to come out and put a label on myself just yet. But I do want you guys to know that as of December 3rd, 2023, Pixel and I were official. It's a very new experience for me, and it's gonna take a lot of time for me to adjust, but I have absolutely no regrets. The last month of my life has genuinely and truly been my mental peak ever, and I have Pixel and all the amazing people I've met in that time to thank for that. Oh, and did I mention that Pixel is an artist? So you best believe that the entire time I've known him, we've been cooking. I was so infatuated with the thought of having a persona of my own that I immediately asked Pixel for help. I sat down, thought about it, conceptualized, and I threw it all his way. And in a truly impressive amount of time, I was given this. This is the first ever official art of Pokey the kangaroo. Pokey is essentially a culmination of all my personality traits, mixed with some aspirations and traits that I want to acquire as a person. And there's an added layer of sentiment in the name. Growing up, one of the nicknames my mom gave me was Jokey Pokey. Ha ha ha, very funny. And I wanted to commemorate my parents. They've always been so supportive of me in everything that I've done, and that's my way of doing it. And I know a bunch of you probably have a bunch of questions, and I'm more than happy to answer absolutely any questions that come my way, given that they're not asshole-ish in nature. But yeah, I appreciate everyone listening to this and hearing me out. It's gonna be a lot to take in, and it's a lot for me to process even still, but I am so excited to go into this new year. This is going to be the year. Once again, I love and appreciate you all, and I hope you guys are just as excited as I am.